Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Wow, how are you?
Good, thank you. Nice to meet you virtually.
Nice to meet you as well. Am I the only one on?
So far, could just be me and you. We might just get your resume done together. I don't know.
Wow, this is awesome. I wanted to make sure I jumped on early because I believe in respecting everybody's time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, I got on early too, which was good. There were 2 links when I got on there. So that was good. I got on early. There's always a glitch with technology, right? There's always something.
So let me make sure I get my quiet space and turn my TV off.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we have a little warm-up time here. I'm just curious, what are you looking for a role right now? Are you just looking to scrub up your resume? What are you looking for?
A little bit of both. I am actually looking for a permanent role. I'm doing some consulting currently.
Okay.
So I've sent my resume out, God, maybe about 100 times since
Okay.
the last day of my permanent role that I had with Camden City School District. My last day there was June 30th. Unfortunately, they couldn't sustain my position because of
Okay.
budget cuts, like most school districts go through at the end of the school term.
Yeah.
So I got laid off on June 30th. So I
Okay.
find myself in a space of transition. So I've been doing some consulting, doing a lot of traveling during the summer, but I said, you know what, now it's time for me to get serious again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find a more permanent opportunity, which I'm hoping I could do.
Mhm.
You know, my ultimate goal is to find a more permanent role for the next, 5 to 7 years, hopefully, because at my age at 55,
Mhm.
I really don't want to be looking for another job every, few years or whatever. But with the economy the way that it is, jobs the way that they are, I'm being realistic but hopeful.
Yeah.
And so I figured when I saw this opportunity about the resume writing, I said, I think my resume looks okay, but it's
Mhm.
always good to get somebody else's opinion on it.
Absolutely. And what did you do at the school? What was your job?
I was the chief communications officer for the Camden City School District.
Oh, okay.
So I was served on the leadership team with the superintendent. I was in charge of managing their whole communications program, internal and external, dealing with
Okay.
various range of stakeholders from politicians to families to students.
Hmm.
Love the work, absolutely love the work. I did that prior to coming to Camden. I actually did it for the Newark Public Schools as well.
Okay.
Between doing it in education and doing it for nonprofits, that's been my experience for the past nearly 20 years.
Okay. So it's the consulting that you're doing also communications then consulting?
I'm actually serving with the National School Public Relations Association doing communications audits for them.
Okay, cool.
It's really great, being on the other side of the school district to see, hey, are your communication programs, are they working properly? So I'm
Yeah.
consulting with them, and I'm also doing media training with nonprofits.
Okay, awesome. And so what's your ideal thing you're looking for? I like to try to know sort of what people are targeting. Ideally, then I can try to work in my examples if possible that way. So
That's a great question. I call
Entonces, la Diana se llevó la lavadora y la secadora y la lavadora, la secadora.
I think that's
¿Y
enough
qué más se llevó?
feedback.
La estufa.
Mentiras.
Sí,
¿Y dónde está todo eso?
hello.
en el storage de
That's
Diana.
the force mute.
Para cuando le hagan.
Yeah, all right. I think that was Vivian.
But yeah, I call myself the jack of all trades, master of none, and I say that too because the bulk of my career is in communications, but I also serve at the executive level as chief of staff, and I do that
Okay.
for nonprofits. So I always say, and I put this on my LinkedIn page. My ultimate is to make the lives of busy executives easier by
Mhm.
maintaining their communications programs or starting one if they don't have one. And
Okay.
as the chief of staff role, controlling and managing and leading the internal controls that makes an
Mhm.
organization work.
Okay.
Making sure operations are up running, making sure HR is doing what they need to do, IT and all those, cross-functional teams that impact
Yeah.
the ultimate leadership of an organization. So my love, my passion, of course, is communications and education. But again, I could do my skills are quite transferable.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that's highlighted or at least represented in my resume.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I always tell people, and Apollonia and Vivian, as well, after the presentation, if you take some of the suggestions and you rework your resume, I'm happy for you to email it to me and I can take a look at it. And, you know, I'm going to give you a lot of information tonight about how to change it. Even if you just take 2 or 3 suggestions, you know, that's usually enough to get people moving in the right direction. But without seeing people's resumes up front, I always want to make sure I cover all the different avenues that are, you know, shortcomings or areas where people can make improvement.
I'm not even sharing it with you. I can email it to you now if you want to use it in example. I don't mind at all.
Yeah. No, you absolutely, if you want to email me the before and if I can work that in. And the other thing is I'm going to give you a checklist too. So if you want to take notes during the presentation, that's fine. Ask questions throughout, but I am going to give you a checklist too, that once everything's sort of digested, you can go through that kind of line by line and just say, okay, have I done this? Have I done that? Whatever. So
what's your email address?
so the email address is Custom Career Solutions.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Custom Career Solutions at Gmail.
Is it customs with an S at the end?
Yep, with a Custom Career Solutions with an S at the end. So just custom with CUSTOM Career Solutions, and Solutions has an S.
Got it. Solutions. Got it. Okay.
All right.
Custom Career Solutions at
gmail.com.
Gmail.com. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
And I'll just put my name in the subject line.
Okay.
And I actually have 2 resumes that I work from. One, I'll see the C-suite one. I think that's the most C-suite resume. There it is. Yeah, we'll start with, let's do that one. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to get started. It's 6:34, and then if I see anybody pop in, I will admit them. But we'll get started, and feel free to ask me questions. I'm going to go through some resume basics, but I'm happy to tailor it to specific questions that you have, especially since we have a small group here tonight. So we might as well take advantage of it, make sure nobody leaves without their questions answered. So I like to think of the resume workshop that we're going to do tonight really as a makeover. And if you think about going for a makeover, right, usually if you think about the before and after, right, in a makeover, when people start out, they're often maybe not feeling great about themselves, or, you know, not as confident as they could be. And, I used to love, I'm dating myself, I used to love the old Oprah makeovers, the before and after, right? And when the women come out after, they carry themselves differently, and they're highlighting all their best features, and they're appreciating all the great things about themselves. And that really is what the resume rewrite process can be like for people. If you put some time and effort into it, it really can give you that confidence, seeing on paper your accomplishments, and not only seeing where you've been, but having a summary that describes where you're headed, can really be that touchstone that can help to spark momentum and really launch your job search. So I love the makeover concept for resumes, especially because many people think of them more like a trip to the dentist, or, they're not the most fun part of the career transition process, right? So it's inevitable that all of us are going to go through changes in our career, right? Valerie, you're right now going through a change that maybe wasn't a choice. Sometimes we choose the change, sometimes the change finds us.
Right.
But essentially, in a 50-year work life, the average person's going to have to navigate an economic recession every 7 years, right? We act like it's a surprise, but really on average, every 7 years, the marketplace changes, and that impacts us. And people change jobs every 3 to 4 years. And right now, our generation, I'm turning 50 next week, our generation has usually 3 distinct careers in our lifetime. And Gen Z, that number is going to be more like 5, because the world of work is just evolving so quickly. So we need to understand how to navigate that change. I also think we like to think about change as this linear, steady progression toward an ultimate goal. And, in my career counseling practice, I've worked with people of all levels and all industries. And I can say some of the most successful people I've worked with when you go back and take their career history to do their resume, you look at what they, went through to get there, it's much more like that squiggly line on the right. It's one step or two steps forward, one step back, learning from failure, really looking at failure as part of growth, and having that resiliency, and even outside of our careers, just life happens, right? And so not being too concerned if you're not following this straight line trajectory, especially with social media. I think we all feel like if we're on LinkedIn, sometimes I have clients that say, it seems like everyone else has this progressive career trajectory. And I've had all these little fits and starts and detours. But the truth is, it's really the norm of what you're seeing on the right. And I think normalizing that is helpful.
Is it okay if we ask questions? Or should we
Absolutely. Yep. Sure.
And you were talking, and especially when you're older, like I said, I said earlier, I'm 55.
Mhm.
So, my career really started off in my, say, early 20s. So, that's a long span. So
Mhm.
when I think about resume, it's like, okay, I don't want to put every single job,
Mhm.
but what I try not to do is have a 3, 4, and 5 page document that no one's going to read, especially when you have this, what's the ATS system with HR now? They want to pick out certain keywords.
Yeah, the applicant tracking systems, right?
The
Mhm.
resume can just go into a black hole, and
Yeah.
that you would like to see will never see it. So I'm very mindful as to what information I put on my resume, because of course I'm keeping it aligned to the job that I'm applying to. But I don't want to have 199 different resumes on my laptop either and get confused. So
Yeah.
I at least want to try to streamline it to having maybe 2 possible resumes that I
Mhm.
send out, but having all these different resumes depending on the job, it can be a bit much, especially if you have a long career.
Mhm.
And
It is a lot, Valerie. And I'm going to show you a summary that I think a couple summary formats that I think can help you not have to have as many versions. If
okay.
you're really targeting very different things, right, then you might need multiple versions. But if you're targeting communications roles, or sort of roles where you're the right hand to the executive leadership team or whatever, generally we should be able to get some type of a summary that you can use for that general area. Sometimes I'll get people that are really looking at very different industries and functions, and then they might need something different. But the goal is to look at those transferable skills and ideally create a summary. But what I love what you said in terms of only putting the information that's really relevant to where you're headed. And so I'm not a big proponent of hard and fast rules like, oh, you should only have 10 years or 15 years of history.
Right.
It's more about, if your very first job was instrumental in your career story, you don't necessarily have to put the date, but you could put a little early career section and just say, oh, I worked in the mayor's office as an intern or whatever. And this is how I, what sparked my career and interest in this area. So you have to think about what's relevant to my career story, what makes it an interesting, compelling career story. And then at what point do I want to start putting actual dates on there as well, which, as far as the dates, I would say maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years. Again, it depends on the level of and the role you're looking at. If you're a career changer and you're looking at more entry level roles, that being older may be more of a detriment, right? There's absolutely ageism out there. But if you're looking for roles where they want experience, and if you're in your 50s, it's absolutely, that's where your peers are, and it's absolutely acceptable, and there isn't as much discrimination, then it's fine to just put the dates and have 20 years of experience on the resume. I really do try to keep it to 2 pages if you can, though. I sometimes will have a resume with an addendum 3rd page if someone has a lot of publications or speaking engagements. But for the most part, if we can't say in 2 pages, and you as a communications person, Valerie, probably can relate to this, then we're probably not being as concise and as clear about our communication as we should be. And we have to remember people are skimming it. So, but a lot of people come to me and think there's a 1-page rule, which there absolutely is not. 2 pages is pretty normalized, especially for people that have more than a few years out of school. So
Yeah, the 2 I sent you, I actually sent you a copy of a 1-pager, which I think I sent you a PDF, and I also sent you a 2-pager, which is, I call it the C-suite resume that I use.
Okay.
But I really like the 1-pager better because it's visually, to me, is more attractive, and it really just kind of hits the points of the things that I did throughout my career, going back to I think 2006, 5 or 6 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, we can kind of look at those two and compare. I think one of the reasons why we have trouble narrowing down what we're going to put on the document sometimes is if we haven't really defined our target. And I highly recommend that everyone take time to really think about what are the ideal job titles and roles that I want to target next. And a resume that isn't targeted really just doesn't compete, because you're trying to stand out against people that are there, whose resume really looks like they're a pretty great match for that type of a job, or they're doing that exact job already. So targeting is key. I always say there's two types of job seekers that usually end up reaching out to me. Some of them are just sort of the go with the flow, whatever kind of I hear about through my network or kind of lands in my lap, that's kind of where I'm going to head. And so the resume, when you look at it, you say, even as a recruiter, if I wanted to help you, you might say, I don't know what they want or where they're headed. And the other one is sort of that shot in the dark where I hear, oh, I've applied to, hundreds of positions over the last few months. I'm not getting any bites. If those positions are just all different types of roles and you're not even really targeting level specifically or the function enough, again, not going to get a lot of bites. So taking that time early on to target is so important. So there's 3 audiences I want everybody to think about when you are thinking about who you're writing this resume for, because it's really not for us, right? It's a marketing document. And so there's 3 audiences that we are selling with our marketing document. The first is, as Valerie mentioned, that applicant tracking system. So we have software that's reading our resume and maybe parsing some of it out or looking for keywords. And we want to make sure we're giving them those keywords that we need. A really great hack that I use on LinkedIn is if you're on your LinkedIn profile page and there's a little 3 dots you can go to right underneath your name and your title, where you can click on create a resume or build a resume. And that'll give you some terms that people are searching on LinkedIn. And that's a good way to get a list of skills to put and keywords to put in your resume. Another way to do this is to just go on the job boards and circle all the words that you see in the resume and make sure that your resume has those keywords. I also love a software called JobScan, where you can upload, it's free, you can upload a job ad, upload your resume, and it will tell you what you are missing in terms of keywords. So kind of does like the applicant tracking system, like a trial run for you. And I like that as well, because it makes it really clear what's missing and what you might want to work into different areas of the resume. So our first audience is the software. The other person we're writing it for is the initial screener. So this might be a recruiter, an internal, external, an HR screener, and they may or may not know a lot about the role, especially if you're applying to a large organization where they're recruiting for a lot of different functions. So we have
I think she froze.
haven't really done our job. So we need to make sure that we're very clear in using language and using the terms of the organization or the role, so that it's very clear to the screener. And then finally, there's the hiring team. That's your third audience, and they're going to really understand what you do, and we have to impress them with our star stories or our SOAR stories, which we're going to talk more about. Any questions about the 3 audiences that we're writing our resume for?
So far, so good.
Hi, good evening. This is Vivian Rodriguez.
Hi, Vivian.
I don't have my camera on because my room's a mess over here.
No problem.
You mentioned something about JobScan. What does that do? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so JobScan, it's jobscan.com. It's just a free software. I think you can do like 10 uploads for free. And you essentially can just upload a job ad file. And then upload your resume document like you would in a job application, and
Okay.
it will you just hit like scan, or I forget what the button says, but you hit the little button there and it'll just say, here's a list of keywords or skills that your resume didn't have that the job ad had. So it's a nice way to kind of do that sanity check, to check for keywords. And I'm glad you kind of asked a question about this, because one thing I would say is if it's a lot of soft skills, job ads aren't always that well written. And there's not always a lot of time and thought that goes into them. So if you see a ton of soft skills, I wouldn't worry as much about those, time management and multitasking and things like that. Those are things you want to prove in your resume with your accomplishment bullets. But if you're seeing hard skills like software that that you didn't include that's in the job ad, or a certain like project management process, those are terms you definitely want to go back and add to your resume. And sometimes we're saying those skills, but we're just using a different term. And so I like JobScan because it makes sure you're using the buzzwords that the actual job ad is using.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I love this little picture. I just want to, if you just take a look at this picture and tell me if you see an old woman or a young woman. I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but
Yeah, this is kind of old.
Yeah.
This is old. This is
actually
very old.
for me, I see a young woman.
You see a young woman first, okay?
I see
And
both.
Valerie, who do you see?
I see the young and old.
You see the young
Yeah.
and old.
Yeah.
And Apollonia, who do you see?
Yeah, I see a young woman.
A young woman. Okay. So Vivian, you said, Valerie, you saw both, and Vivian, you saw the.
The first thing I see is a young woman.
Mhm.
But like I said, this is an old picture, but right now my vision saw a young woman.
Okay. So Apollonia, I want you to see if you see the young woman, she sort of has the feather coming out of her
Yeah.
her cap, and the old woman has the
I see her now.
Okay. It's like this
I see it.
flips, right? Yeah.
It's almost like the young woman's chin is the old woman's nose.
Yes, and her nose. You're right.
Exactly.
You're right, Valerie. Wow. Yes.
So the reason why I love this old school picture is because before you start writing your resume, mindset is so important, right?
Mhm.
How we view ourselves and how we value the skills and the strengths that we bring to our job is so important, because how you view yourself is really going to be reflected on that page. And so, this is the same dots and lines on a page, but look how differently we can see it, right? We can see it as the young woman, we can see it as the old woman. And I want everyone to just take stock in their accomplishments and in what they have to offer, and take that time to really think about what you're most proud of and what your target market cares most about, and just put yourself in the right frame of mind. I have a lot of clients who come to me and it's not that they can't write their resume well, it's that they don't really believe in themselves as a product. And it's hard to sell a product that we don't really believe has value. So I love just that reminder before we kind of get into the meat of things. All right, so what are the things that we need to know about ourselves and have clarity on before we can start writing our resume? We need to understand our transferable skills, those skills that we can use from job to job or function to function, right? We have to understand what are our job specific skills. Where's our field headed, and what are the most in-demand skills that we need to make sure we highlight on our resume? Our key accomplishments, right? What are those things we're most proud of? And even if we're making a career pivot, how do we talk about our accomplishments in terms that the new employer is going to care about? Then there's our interests, our values, and all of that sort of rolls up into our professional brand. I use an assessment called UMAP. I love strengths coaching. And so there's the Gallup Strengths website, you can use to find out what your top 5 strengths are. But I highly recommend just taking some time to really think about what do I offer? What are my strengths and skills, and what are my values? One of the things I love to do when someone is writing a resume with me is look at the top 5 to 10 companies you want to target or organizations you want to target. Read their websites, look at their values, and think about how can I, if they match my values, which hopefully they do, how can I insert some values-oriented language into my resume? So when they read my resume, it feels like them. It feels like I'm one of them already, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes we overlook the values piece. We kind of think about the hard skills, but values language also really matters. And that also really matters in the cover letter. So that you sound like you belong in that community and you are aligned with that community's mission. So these are just some self-assessment tools. There's some great free assessment tools online. I love the ONET Interest Profiler. It's mynextmove.com or .org, sorry. There's also the 16 personalities. If you're looking for ways to describe yourself and sort of reinvent or just have some new ways to talk about your skills and strengths, both of these both of these first two bullets here have some great, great language to kind of refresh how you're talking about yourself. Also read through your performance reviews, right? What are third parties saying about you? It's so hard to toot our own horn, but often a manager will have said what we're great at, and we can take that language and even add a quote onto our resume. So go back and read through some of those like emails you had from a colleague thanking you for a project well done. And what was it that they recognized in you? What are you always the go-to person for, right? Think about what people come to you for, whether it's on the job or otherwise.
And you said add a quote. I would be curious to know as to where would you add a quote on your res. And what I've done and what I have done when it comes to like my cover letter, before I close my cover letter, I invite the person that I'm writing to look at my LinkedIn, because on my LinkedIn, I have like 12, 13 recommendations. So just like those quotes that would be shown on the resume,
yeah,
I refer to folks to my LinkedIn, and you can see a whole page or something that someone wrote about my work, me, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So
I love that idea of, because I usually put the LinkedIn URL right in the header, and you'll see in some of the samples.
Absolutely.
But to ask them in the cover letter, I've actually never heard someone say that, to ask them in the cover letter, to invite them, to remind them, hey, have you looked at my recos?
Yep.
I love that idea, Valerie.
I definitely, absolutely put that in my cover letter to say, hey, if you have a second, please take the time to visit my LinkedIn profile, where you will see what others said about me and my work.
And almost always the HR screener or recruiter is going to look at your LinkedIn profile, but sometimes the hiring manager may or may not get to that. And so I love that when they read the cover letter, it's giving them that extra reminder, someone that maybe wasn't doing the initial screening and didn't look at your LinkedIn. So, and sometimes certain hiring managers, depending on the industry, just might not think to do that. So I love that idea. I think I'm going to work that in as a suggestion in my checklist.
Yeah, that's really smart. I like that.
Yeah, love it.
Very personable, very nice. Yeah, I like that.
All right, so thinking about assessing what we do well, right? And then we understand who we are. We understand our strengths and our skills and our values and how we're going to talk about our accomplishment stories. But we also have to understand our target in the marketplace, right? So a lot of people, when they're not getting bites on their resumes, sometimes it's that the target is a little askew, right? So maybe they're targeting jobs that are just a level below or a level above where they should be targeting. So they either look under or overqualified. So thinking about what is that right level that I should be targeting, tweaking that can make a big difference. Obviously, the function that we're bringing, so whether we're in finance or HR, right, and using those great functional terms and showing our expertise in our function. We talked about level. The industries, think about, okay, so maybe I am in HR, but I want to keep myself open to other industries. Maybe my industry is dying out, or maybe I'm just not as excited about my industry anymore. So you might choose to write a summary that takes some of the industry language out and really just focuses on your human resources accomplishments without making it industry specific. Or maybe you have an expertise in an industry, like, Valerie works in education, so maybe she wants to play that up because she plans to stay in that role. Then you want a summary that's really very industry specific. What are the challenges of the education, field, and making sure you're focusing on that. Location is always a hot button now, right? Because of so much remote work and all the changes that happen. So are you open to a remote role or a hybrid role? And how you describe the roles you've had can make a difference. Sometimes people don't mention that they had a remote role, but they're looking for a remote role next, and demonstrating that I've already done remote work and done it well is important, right? And if you don't want your next role to be remote and this one's remote, you may not play that up in your resume. So location means more than it did, I think, just a few years ago. And it's whether you want to be hybrid or remote, and highlighting your ability to perform in those types of environments can be important. And then finally, the organizational mission and the company culture, and getting clarity on demonstrating, like we talked about before, those values and aligning them with the target that you're looking to work for. Any questions on targeting?
I don't know if this is a question more so than a statement. So communications is the work. Education is the industry, but I can do communications in any industry.
Yeah.
Mine is probably technology, technical, or, hospital type communications, because that's very specific type of communications. So I'm just wondering, how can I make sure I don't limit myself to just communication and education?
Yeah, so when you're writing about your accomplishments, taking out the education jargon, we all, when we get so embedded in our industry, we don't even realize the terms we're using sometimes are not as transferable as they could be. And so I like to put my recruiter hat on and think about, okay, if I'm applying to this healthcare communications job, let me read that job ad, put the hat of the recruiter, our hiring team on, and say, am I using words where when they read one of my accomplishment bullets or they read my summary, could I sound like I already work for them? Right. And if you have your resume loaded up with education terms and acronyms, or, just the way it's communications maybe is done in education that's different, that's going to throw them off, right? When they have other resumes of people doing it already in healthcare. But if you really just hone in on the value that your communications brought to the organization, the benefits that are more overarching, right? If you think about the benefits of communications, right? Maybe it's engaging constituents, or getting people aligned around a new initiative, right? Or so those are things that a hospital or a healthcare system would also need to do. And so using benefits language that means something to them is key. And I think having someone proof your resume from that industry could be helpful, from the new industry. And just never put an acronym. I always like to either write out the acronym or define the acronym, or just avoid them altogether, because that really does, make them say, can they take that skill and really learn our industry or use it in our world, or what they didn't really apply
And
to what we do,
because
right?
I've been in the K-12 industry, in the K-12 space since 2006. So I would think my normal progression would go from K-12 education communications to now college and university level. But that's a very, very difficult space to get into, because most colleges and universities, they usually hire somebody already within the university, or just coming out of a classroom or something like that. But I actually just applied for a job at Rutgers University here in Camden, Jersey. I've been wanting to work for Rutgers forever.
Yeah, I went to Rutgers. I love Rutgers. So Valerie, thinking about what are the common problems or issues that keep the people at Rutgers, at Camden, and the K-12 system that you worked at, what are the common things that, they're dealing with, the common issues the common problems that you solved and addressed, right? And then using that language to talk about what you did in the K-12 environment, that would be the best way to help them see you in that new light. And that really is our job as job seekers, is to connect those dots. We both know that you could do that job in higher ed, right? You probably love to learn new things too. So anything that is new, you'd probably be excited to learn it. But the truth is, they're just going to look at that, like you said, they're going to look at your resume. Oh, she's K-12. We're looking for a higher ed person. So it's our job to take that summary, to take that cover letter and connect those dots for them, and help them see, no, I speak your language. And what I really love to do with career pivoters or changers is actually make your background that's different a benefit instead of like a competitive advantage. So I'm going to bring a different kind of angle or a different type of problem solving, or, hey, you know what you're dealing with now, we already dealt with that in the K-12 environment and we solved that. And let me talk to you about what we did. We're a little ahead of your industry, wherever you are. I don't know if that's true for your specific case, but think about, what does your different background, how can we flip that and actually make it a competitive advantage, where you're bringing something that the most of the candidates they're getting that have just been doing same old in higher ed for years, maybe they wouldn't have that perspective that you bring. I love sort of when I'm problem solving with something in my industry, I love talking to people in other industries, because often that's where a lot of the innovation and creativity comes, when, this isn't the way we've always done it. And a lot of solutions do come from other places. And so, but we have to sell that right on the resume. Okay. And we can do a lot of this too by doing our research, right? What are some good ways to find out, what does the higher ed communications department, what are they looking for? What are the hot skills and the trends that they're looking for? And the best way to get it good information, to have a great resume, is doing career research conversations. If there's one thing you take away from this presentation, I would say talk to 10 people in companies or jobs or industries that you want to target with your new resume, and ask them, what are you looking for? What's keeping you guys up at night? What in my type of role, what's most important? I think I'm interested in this, but do you see other job titles that my background would fit into? Maybe that would give me a better shot into your organization, right? So you're going to get at great information by asking people who are doing those roles. We can do all the online research, which is great. We can look at job ads. We can look at the employer website or professional association websites, Glassdoor, all those great things. But you're never going to get as good of the real deal and also just quality information as you will talking to people in the field. And then you're also building your network. So while you're just asking for conversations to gather information, now you also know someone that if a job opens up at their organization, who knows if they would be willing to, put in a good word or just help introduce you to someone on the hiring team. There's two types of formats traditionally that we use in resumes. There's chronological, which is starting with your most recent job and working your way back. And then there's functional, where people would take their overarching skills and sort of take all the things they did in their different jobs and grouping it by function. So I had communications, I had project management, I had sales, whatever the skills they were using. And hands down, recruiters love chronological resumes much, much more. They want to just see that natural progression. They want to know if there's gaps, and it's just easier for them to get a sense of your career history. But if we're not looking for jobs exactly like what we were doing in the past, sometimes the chronological by itself is a hard sell, and we're not able to really highlight those transferable skills in their totality the way we want. So a functional summary I really like, and I'll show you an example of that, where you take what are the 3 most transferable skills that I bring to this job I'm targeting, and let me summarize for you throughout my career sort of what I've done in those areas, my biggest accomplishments in those areas. So I like what I would call a hybrid format, where you have a functional summary and then a chronological professional experience section. What else I think I covered a lot of these things. You want to make sure that your accomplishments are bulleted. You don't really want more than 3 lines of text tops without adding a bullet. Don't give them big paragraphs of text on the resume. We don't use first person like I really love the Calibri font. I think it's very clean, a very clean and readable font. A lot of recruiters are on their phones, believe it or not. I mean, my eyes are going, I don't know how they're doing it on their phones, but when I say, how are you screening resumes? It's on my iPad, on my phone at night, I'm kind of screening. So Calibri is a nice font for digital reading. And generally you want 1 to 2 pages and some white space on the document.
I have a question.
Yep.
So in 2015, I got laid off so I'm pharma.
Okay.
I got laid off from Bayer. I worked there for I don't even remember. I think it was 9 or 11 years.
Okay.
And then that was in 2015. So my kids were little, and I decided, hey, what a great opportunity. We lived a little tight, but I don't regret it. I loved and enjoyed every minute of being a stay-at-home mom with my little guys for the 5 years.
Yeah.
It was time to go back to work. I didn't want to go, my thick head didn't want to go back to corporate. So I started working in a school system. Now I don't want to stay there. I want to go back to corporate.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now. I actually just had a phone interview with somebody, and I think it went well, but we'll see. So on my resume, I have one for schools, for public schools, but I don't want to stay. I want to go back to the corporate world. And then I have one for corporate. So you were saying about chronological order, and then the other one, I forgot the other name.
Functional.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do I put anything in there regarding why I was gone for 5 years?
So you had 5 years that was truly a break where you were raising your kids. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. I didn't go back to the workforce. I was just
And then how
PTA
many
mom.
And then how many years were you in education before now that you've decided to go back?
Education. So I was an executive assistant at corporate, and now what they call in the schools, they still call secretaries. They're not called administrative assistants.
Right.
Functional. I'm just writing this down. I'm taking notes.
Okay.
And I've been with the public school system for 2 years already.
Okay.
This is my 3rd year, because schools are different. They do July. July is it's so confusing to me. I'm still trying to learn this whole lingo.
Vivian, I can help you out with this a little bit, because I worked in education since 2006. So
thank you.
I feel your pain in the education. they'll call you a clerk typist 1, 2, or 3, or they will
Yes.
call you administrative assistant or an executive assistant or a special assistant, depending on your level.
The levels, exactly.
If you're the EA in the corporate world, in my opinion, you should apply for an EA or a special assistant, even in education. Now, will they take you? That's a different story because they're very specific when it comes to executive assistants and special assistants in the education world.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have 20 plus years in being a receptionist to a secretary to a, and I went up all the way to EA.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like it's really difficult to try to get up the ladder with the school system.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right because of the fact that most clerk typists at schools, they'll apply for the EA role in the administrative and central office. So that's why it's so difficult. But I would love to talk to you offline to help out if you.
Yes, Valerie, thank you. Yes. Are you going to be going to the thing on Saturday?
I am.
I'll see you there. I'll be there too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Vivian,
thank
are you targeting corporate roles next or education roles or both?
No. I'm doing corporate right now.
So now you're looking to go back to corporate. Is that what you're targeting?
Yep. And
Okay.
it doesn't have to be pharma. It can be constructional, corporate. I mean, because
Yeah.
I'm an executive assistant, so I can take that anywhere.
Yeah. So
I can take
you
it
could
anywhere.
probably combine those resumes then, combine that experience. What's great is that you really didn't change functions, right? You're still doing administrative support roles. And so
Yes.
you're still using those same skills. And so sort of like what we were talking about before, kind of de-education industrying the roles that you had most recently and putting
Yeah.
that more in terms that, just corporate executive assistant type language. And then that's not a bad bridge job. We call them bridge jobs when we've been home for whatever reason and you're looking to get back in, you're at least
Okay.
using your skill set. You're just trying to now switch industries. So I think one resume that demonstrates, hey, I'm back in the workforce and I'm using those organizational skills that I had before. I'm just using them in the school system. I think there's a way you could have one resume actually that's chronological and then has that functional summary that we will talk more about.
Okay.
I was saying to Valerie before, the rest of you jumped on the call, I'm happy to take a look at your resume after I go through I'm going to give you all a checklist that you can use to kind of make some updates that we talked about today. And if you want to send me that afterwards, I'm happy to take a look at it and just do see if I see any other white space or areas of what could, make it a stronger case.
Great,
for
thank
what you're
you.
targeting.
And what I
So-
learned too when I and this is just something I tried to practice when there was a long span or break in service, as I call it, I would
Yeah.
always use words like freelancing, volunteering, consulting. Even though you were a stay-at-home mom for 5 years or whatever, I'm pretty sure in those 5 year that 5 year span.
No. I did temp work as well. Yeah.
That's my point.
temp.
Exactly. So you can say something like during that time, or you can put that in your cover letter. During that time, you were able to do some tip work or freelance somewhere.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of what they're going to wonder. Just are you comfortable with MS Office? Are your technical skills up to date? And if that's the case, there's not a lot of. It's really then comes down to networking at that point too. To just when you're trying to get back in, getting that internal referral can make a big difference. So
I know
that's a big part of it. But you want to have a great resume so that when that person is recommending you, the person that doesn't know you looks at it and says, okay, I can see how they can fit, and you're vouching for them as an employee. So even better, right? We want to help them help you. And the market is such that, depending in certain pockets, you still might be able to get a job cold if you write your resume in a way that is making sure those key skills are highlighted in your summary.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if we just look at the basic header information, it's pretty obvious. We're going to have our phone number, our email, our LinkedIn URL. I recommend putting that at the top so it's really easy for them to either click on it or copy and paste it, and they don't have to say which Jane Smith is this, how do I find her LinkedIn profile? And then you might want to put your town and your state. I don't recommend putting your exact address. You don't need to have your street address, and you honestly don't even need to put your town if you don't want to. It depends on your zip code, or it depends on if you feel like I'm really shopping around for things right in my area so it shows that I don't have a long commute, and that's helpful. Fine. You don't want to put it, they're going to see where your other jobs are located, and they're going to get an idea of where you are. But you have to kind of think strategically, I think, about location and whether that helps or hurts you. I know some recruiters don't like to hire people that are too far away. from their, what they deem to be too far away. So just keeping that in mind can be helpful. All right, so what are the different components of our summary, right? We used to talk about objectives. You see an objective statement at the top of your resume, and it would say something like, you know, I'm this kind of a professional and this is what I'm looking for. And we've done away with that. And what we're doing now is summaries essentially, and a summary branding statement at the top. So you're going to want to have your job title you're going for. You don't have to put the word summary anymore. You don't have to put profile. Just put the job title that you're targeting. So in your case, you know, Vivian, you'd put something like administrative assistant or whatever level and title.
Okay, so then remove the summary.
Yeah, so here's what I think about that. Every word on the resume needs to add value. And if it doesn't, we should get rid of it. And if I'm that, what I was talking about before, that initial HR screener, and I'm looking for an admin assistant, if I have a resume that right up at the top says admin assistant, that's helpful to me. Oh, I'm looking for an admin assistant. This is an admin assistant resume, right? So right from the beginning, we want to start painting the outline of who you are as a professional and saying, hey, I'm a match for that job ad. And so if you can call yourself the exact title of the job you're applying for, I recommend just changing the title on your resume when you apply to match the job ad. Obviously, sometimes we can't call ourselves exactly that if we're a career changer or whatever, but get as close as you can and start defining yourself right from the beginning. And then underneath that, we're going to have a branding statement, one sentence that they can read that's going to help them understand who you are as a professional if they do nothing else, right? And then we want to have some career highlights in that summary. And then an area of expertise section. And you want to think about writing tight, clean, and lean, and making it very skimmable. If you think about how we digest information now, especially in our digital world, right? It's all very snackable little bites of snippets of information. Like even if you're looking for, you know, how to cook a turkey for 9 ways to cook a turkey for Thanksgiving, right? It's very much these little snackable bites, and our resume needs to be that same way. We can't start out with that big long paragraph about ourselves that's 5 lines long because we're going to lose them at hello. So I'll show you a sample summary too that we can, you know, kind of pick apart there.
Are you going to be sending this to us? Are you going to email this to us?
I can email this to you. I'll also send you the checklist, and I'll also send you a sample resume. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm taking notes, but that works. Thank you so much.
My phone number and Gmail in the chat just in case you needed it.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, you know, I was going to just send it to Dress for Success, to the office, and have them send it to you guys. But if you send me your emails directly, I can just, because there's only the 3 of us or whatever, or the 4 of us, I can just do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to chat.
So thinking about the branding statement, right? That one sentence that sums up who you are as a professional. You want to think about who you are, what services or skills you most want to use next, right? We don't have to have our summary be sort of our life story. It's where we're headed, not where we've been. So if you have certain skills that you don't love using and you don't want to use them next, we don't even have to be talking about them. I find a lot of people kind of put it all in that initial intro, and a lot of it isn't where they're headed. You also want to think about who's your audience, right? So if you have had experience in pharma and you want to go back to pharma, make sure that you're talking about how you've had Fortune 100 experience or big pharma experience, or maybe you want to you have a friend who has a contact in oncology. You want to be more specific that you've worked in clinical trial oncology, you know, for clinical trial oncology executives, whatever, whoever your audience is, right? Make sure that you're using that language that matters to them. And then those most important skills that you want to use next. I love thinking about Flo from Progressive because she's just such a clear brand. Like we all know who she is. She's, you know, enthusiastic seller of insurance, right? And you want your branding statement to be that clear so that it paints a picture of who you are as a professional. So let's look at some examples of old school objectives versus sort of that new branding statement language. So in this first one, we've got, it says objective, right? Which we don't do anymore. And it says to obtain a position that uses my skills and abilities to contribute to the goals of the organization, excellent verbal and written communicator, adept at multitasking in a deadline-driven environment. These are phrases that I see on a ton of resumes, and they're all great skills to have, but it could be anybody. Like this sentence could be any one of us, right? And so we really want to make it sound specific to our target and to who we are. And so does someone want to, so we don't have to keep listening to my voice, just read that title and the summary statement down below there.
It says experienced administrative assistant.
Yep, right there.
Resourceful, computer savvy administrative assistant with 10 years of success facilitating efficient scheduling, in-depth presentation preparation, and effective client communications to ensure smooth operations for 25+ employee law firm.
So see just the difference in clarity, moving away from that multitasking, good communicator, blah, 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 to I work for law firms. I've been doing it for 10 years. These are the three main things I do really well. I'm great at communications and presentations and facilitating, everybody, making sure they're all in the right place at the right time. We're using a couple of descriptive adjectives, but we're being very choosy about them. I'm resourceful and computer savvy, right? Based on what we know those offices or industry is looking for. And so, and then we've got our title right at the top. Instead of objective, right? We're saying I am an administrative assistant.
Can I read you mine? Do you think I can read you mine real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
But I'm definitely going to email it to you. So I think it's pretty lengthy. So I had summary, but I removed it because you told me to remove it.
Okay.
So I have self-motivated, detail-oriented professional with 20+ years of executive administrative assistant experience. Work with C-level and other levels of management, proven team commitment, multitasking capability, and management skills that drives business needs and delivers results. Excellent oral verbal communication, organizational, and interpersonal skills with a track record of maintaining positive relationships with both customers and staff, dedicated to providing the highest quality deliverables to both internal and external customers. Is that too long? That to me is like, it's a
little long. I loved how it started out and then it did get a little bit generic. And so I think what you could do is really pretty easily take that big block and break it down into exactly what we are going to do next, which is, here's just a few other examples of summary. So I like 2 lines now. Resumes are getting less and less language and less words because our attention spans and the way we process information is just getting so streamlined, for better or worse. That's what's happening. And so marketing is following suit. So I'm even doing 2-line branding statements most times, but here's a couple that have 3, and part of it's just it being in PowerPoint too. But reliable accountant with 10 years of success, providing timely and accurate financial reporting to drive Fortune 500 compliance and profitability. Driven sales leader with a passion for developing innovating parenting products and 8 years of success cultivating relationships and building brands in the baby gear industry. Tech savvy science teacher using hands-on lessons to spark interest of high school students and inspire lifelong learning. I think you want it to be about that long. And then a lot of those other details that you had sort of in the second or third sentence, I think you can break that out into those key transferable skills. So, which is where we're headed. So here's an example of a title, a branding statement. Here's someone who's a teacher. And so we're putting a little more of a philosophy of education in here, which of course in corporate, you wouldn't do. And then we have 3 of the most important things for that hiring team to know about you that would make them want to pick up the phone and interview you. And so I think hidden in there, Vivian, was probably those 3 most important things. But instead of saying them in a way that is sort of generic, like it could be anyone, you might want to think about, okay, because I'm great at multitasking, that's the skill I bring, right? What's the benefit to my organization because I have that ability, right? How have I demonstrated that ability and what was the benefit? So, I sometimes use the example of cereal. Like if I were to tell you, oh, you guys should eat my breakfast cereal because it's high in fiber and protein and, vitamins and minerals, right? It's like, okay, maybe, I like vitamins and minerals, fiber sounds good. I guess I'd consider eating it. But what if I told you that protein in my cereal actually helps me get rid of my mid-morning slump that I normally would have when I was eating another cereal. And so I'm actually able to be an hour more productive every day when I eat that cereal, which translates into another resume a week that I write, which translates into another $1,000 a month that I earn. So how about if I told you, if you eat my cereal, you could actually earn an extra $1,000 a month doing what I do, right? And now I'm talking benefits language. I'm taking that protein in the cereal, which is the skill, and I'm showing you what the benefit is when you buy that product, right? And so when you're writing those summary statements, those career highlights, I want you to think about the benefits to the organization, The other thing you want to think about is the specifics. So in this case, this teacher knew that the school district she wanted to get hired in was only looking for science teachers that had highly qualified teacher status. It's just a very specific type of test she took, and got a certain grade on that test, right? So she put that knowing that's something that's really key that they're looking for, right? She also knew that budget cuts were an issue. So she talked about experience teaching innovative experiments and cost effectively upgrading labs. So I'll take whatever science equipment I can get and I make the most out of it for the students and to be within budget. And then finally, that differential instruction, right, that she knew was a key element. So, and when you see it bulleted out instead of that big fat paragraph, I think it's a little easier for people to digest. So I think you can easily take those last few sentences, bullet them out, and just make them more specific.
Okay, yeah, they can see it more. It's not like all, because right now, like I'm looking at it and it's like a big, it looks just like a big, just running, just too much.
Yeah, and think about too, read every bullet and say to yourself, put the hat of the hiring team on and say, so what? So what? I'm a multitasker. Does anybody really care if you can multitask? Maybe, but what's the benefit of your multitasking, right? How does that impact the office or the executive that you're working for? What's the benefit to them? And start and translate that skill into benefit language. And it will, when you read it, you'll be like, wow, okay, it's much more impactful. And it's also a little more transferable, to other people will care about that more as well.
Okay, thank you, perfect.
And then the other thing you can also do, so let's say you just have this kind of string of skills in your first few sentences, pull some of those out and just put them in a core competencies section. So you've got your title, your branding statement, your 3 most important things you want them to know about you that will make them, if you ran into them in an elevator and had them trapped for a few minutes, what would you tell them about you that would make them want to hire you for the job, right? And then underneath there, just put, maybe 9 to 12 bulleted skills that you have. And then that's nice so that at a glance, they can see, oh, these are all the things that Vivian can do. Maybe some of them were back when you're in your pharma days, but when you pull it all together with your more recent skills, then they can see all at a glance. And they don't have to go hunt through your jobs to say, well, does she do MS Office? Does she know this other software? It's all going to be there. Oh, did she do expense reporting? It's all going to be up front.
Now, would the same tips work for a C-suite level director, executive director, chief level position who, again, been in leadership roles for a number of years and who had a staff reporting to them? Like in my case, I've had 10 people reporting to me. I've served in these high level positions. So would these same tips work on my resume?
I think so. This is actually the way I use
definitely.
an executive summary. And I think one of the samples I have that I'll show you has sort of that real executive level summary. And that's one I can send you as a sample too. So yes, I would say absolutely. I think the way we communicate is the same regardless of the level in terms of it being concise, succinct, snackable, like digestible little bites of information and benefits language, so overall, what are the benefits you bring to an organization if I hire you versus someone else? And that's pretty transferable across the board. And I do like in my executive summaries, I like to put this core skills at the top as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're getting into the meat of the professional experience section. So you're going to have the employer name, the city and state where the employer is, your job title, and don't get too hung up on your job title. So like when we're in the school system, you're clerk 1, you're clerk 2, and the title matters so much. Right. Honestly, just write the job title in a way that matters to the new employer. So I get these tech companies, some of my clients work for, where they give them really goofy job titles like chief smile officer or whatever, and then they're in HR, and they just aren't meaningful to people on the outside. So unless you're applying internally within a school system where those levels really matter, those little names matter to them, just put, administrative assistant and you don't have to be, or at a minimum, if you're going to put the exact title that's like the official title in the system, make sure you put another, like a comment and another title next to it, like administrative assistant, that's descriptive, because there's nothing worse for someone like me as a recruiter to look at a job and see titles and not really understand what they mean, or have them reflect something that's not what they actually were doing. So keep that in mind. You also want to make sure your start date and end date is right aligned, like right justified in a right-hand column. That is like one of the few things that applicant tracking systems don't like, is when the dates are over on the left or they're not right justified. So I do always point out that for people. And don't assume that the reader knew anything about your past employer. So even if you worked for AT&T or ADP, right, don't just have the title and not describe a little bit about the organization and your scope. So for example, if you were working for AT&T, for example, did you work with business on the business side, selling to business customers, or working with business customers, or on the consumer side, right? How big was the department that you were in? What function were you under? Give them some description so I can have context around your accomplishments. Even if it's a school district, is there anything about working in that school district that might matter to the target market that you're working for next? Maybe it was a really fast-paced, dynamic environment, something about there's a lot of organizational change going on, or schools were merging, and so you had to deal with communications in a very dynamic situation. Or even as the administrative assistant, maybe there was a lot of new initiatives going on that you were spearheading, right? Things that might be relevant. Give some context to who your employer was and where you fit inside of that organization. Any questions on that, or comments? Or
Well, thank you. It's a lot. Thank you.
it is a lot. That's why I give the checklist. Honestly, I created the checklist after a while because I was like, it's a lot and it's hard to even take notes on all this, but I want everybody to have more, because I don't know where you most want to do the work, and then, take 2 or 3 tips and that'll get you closer to where you need to be. So the next piece is our accomplishment statement. And I highly encourage you to get good at writing a great accomplishment statement, because those then become your your interview stories, right? So you're teeing up those questions you want them to ask you about on your resume. And some people call it CAR, some people call it STAR, but essentially you want to think about the challenge that you're presented with in your job, the action that you took, and the result. And many times, I can't tell you, at every level of every function, when I see a resume initially, it very rarely quantifies the results very often. And so what happens is the resume reads like a job description. And when it reads like a job description, it doesn't make you stand out. It could be anyone's resume again. But when you're quantifying your accomplishments, now you're talking in benefits language. And I'm also learning something about you. I'm learning as a hiring manager that you care about results. You take time to think about what they were, and you measure them and track them. And nobody wants someone, everybody wants someone that does that, right? That pays attention to the impact they're having on the organization and actually goes back and measures the value that they provide. So do your best to try to quantify and measure. And one great way to do that is through percentages. So I get a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm I don't work in finance, so I don't really save money or boost sales. So I don't know how to create like numbers in my resume in terms of quantifiable benefits. And one of the things you can always do is, let's say whatever department you're in, you streamlined a process that used to take, 2 days a week, and you streamlined it. So now it only takes 1 day a week, right? Okay, so that was a 50% improvement in efficiency in this particular area, right? Another reason why I love percentages is if you are working with dollars and cents and you end up using numbers that are too big or too small, relative to your target, they may say, oh, this person works with big numbers, like they're not going to be interested in our organization because we're much smaller. Or the opposite, oh, wow. Okay, so they sold 10% over quota year over year, but their quota was pretty low relative to our salespeople. So if you use percentages, it shows the improvement, but it doesn't necessarily rule you out because what you're doing was too big or too small of peanuts for the target market. So this is just some examples of CAR statements. Automated payroll administration, reducing processing time by 50% while undergoing staff reductions and moving department to a new location. So also think about context, right? How many of us worked through the pandemic where just holding on to things as they were? I can't even imagine, Valerie, what your job was like during the pandemic, right? Like just holding on to the status quo was a huge accomplishment, just keeping the wheels on the bus. Yep. And so if you give some, I have a lot of people that wrote maintained retail sales during the pandemic, didn't even grow sales, but just held on. And that's huge. So think about what was going on. Was there some major crisis that the organization was undergoing and I was still able to improve some profitability or improve processes or whatever? And if you can quantify it, do your best to do that. Any questions on a CAR statement? The checklist that I'm going to give you also has a list of verbs at the bottom, like the third page is just a list of verbs, because sometimes we just run out of verbs. So the one thing I don't like seeing on a resume is responsible for. So if you think of anything else, have career research conversations and go through your resume and get rid of responsible for. We just don't, as recruiters and people, if you've hired people in the past, it's like, give me something more powerful than that, right? That's kind of the words before the verb. Responsible for doing what? Just start with the verb of what you were doing. And again, I'll give you a list of those. Okay, so we've got our summary. We've got our good CAR statements in our professional experience section. What else do we put on there? Our education, our certifications, our licenses. We can always have sections for that. If there's something that's crucial to the job, so I have people that sometimes have like a PMP, a project management professional certification that's required for a lot of the roles they're applying for. Put that in your summary as well. You can put it in your certifications if they're looking for it there, but you also want to highlight that, right? If the role you're looking for is looking for, that you have an MBA or some kind of software certification, you might want to think about, how do I add that into my 3 bullets, accomplishment bullets, or my summary statement at the beginning? If language matters, if you're bilingual and you're applying for a role that serves bilingual customers or students, right? That's something you might want to pull up to the top. And then, again, you can state it in a language section at the bottom.
Here's a question I have for you. The
Yep.
word bachelor degree or bachelor's, master's, I always get confused. Should I do S or apostrophe S or just say MA or BA, BS?
Yeah. So they're all different, honestly. So a lot of times, depending on the school, I'll Google things sometimes if I'm not sure, but, and I've seen some crazy degrees, over the years. But for the most part, it's either a BA, Bachelor of Art, or it's a BS, Bachelor of Science. And it's usually just Bachelor without the S of something.
Same thing for master's.
If you were to leave that part out, you might put an apostrophe S if you don't say of art or of science. But most of the time people want to know, was it a BA? Was it BS? For a master's, it could be an MA, Master of Arts. Mine's an MED, so that's like a Master of Education in Counseling, So you could Google up your exact department and degree and school to see how do they say it. Okay. But generally it's a Bachelor of Art or a BA. And I do purposely put Bachelor of Art and then in parentheses BA, because I have noticed that in the applicant tracking systems, sometimes they put BA, sometimes they spell it out. And I just like to give everybody the best possible chance of, and also even when they're skimming it, some people think more BA, some people read it out. So I do usually put the abbreviation in the middle.
So amazed when people say, "Oh, I have my MBA," which is just a master's in business admin, which is great, but having an MBA is no different than having a master's in another. I have a master's in organizational management, so I'm not saying I have a MOM or something like that. Or I just say master's in organizational management. But people seem to focus more on, "Oh wow, you have your MBA." I'm like, okay, and
yeah, well, no, and a lot of MBAs are focused on organizational leadership or HR, right? So it could be very similar. If your concentration is people management, or it could absolutely be something very similar. Yeah, I think in institutions of public trust, like schools, government, the organizational piece, not rather than the MBA, might even be more valued. But in the corporate sector, they're just probably more familiar with MBAs. Sometimes it just comes down to what people are more familiar with too. And then any licenses. So if there's a license required, you also might want to think about putting that up in the summary at the top. And you guys asked me where would you put a quote, right? So sometimes I'll put, if a quote is really powerful, like it's something from that your boss said about you, and it's in your in your performance review, and it's really highlighting the skills you most want to use next. Sometimes I'll put it in the summary right underneath like those 3 bullets, or right underneath the areas of expertise section where you list all your skills. Sometimes I'll put it up top. And then if it's something that's nice, but maybe not maybe not as powerful, I'll put it at the very bottom, sort of to kind of wrap it up and tie you up with a bow and a nice little like, and hey, by the way, this is what I've done. And this is what people said about me based on what I did. And I think one of the samples I have has a quote, so we can look at how that played out. Community activities, you can put some volunteer accomplishments or, different types of leadership that you may have had outside of your role. It's such a charged time. I do tell people to be careful about religious or political affiliations. If you want to only work at a place where everyone along the hiring chain, is not going to discriminate against your religious or political beliefs, then by all means, like, it's fine to put those things if there are relevant skills that you're using for your job. If you're not sure that just some random person in that process might have a bias, it's sometimes, and you don't think that adding that really adds to your employability for that role or your ability to gain a role like that, you might want to consider leaving it off, because people are just at an all-time high of discriminating for all kinds of reasons, and politically and religiously. And so giving some consideration to that. I used to talk to people a lot about this study. This was before all the political divide went down. But I used to talk to people about this study where they showed the same exact experience. And it was a mom who had done a lot of things with the PTA, a married dad that you could see coached or whatever, and then a single woman and a single man without kids. And and when you looked across all that experience being the same exact other experience, the mom who demonstrated something that she was a mom, a woman that demonstrated she was a mom and had a lot of PTA volunteer work, it actually hurt her getting hired. So, which I hate to say, but I also want my women that I'm working with to be aware of that. And so unless a lot of the volunteer work associated with raising your family is central, and it's the only way you're able to demonstrate that skill, sometimes think about leaving it off, because I think it went, the married father was most likely to be hired, then the single dad, the single man, then the single woman, then the married woman, or the woman that showed she had children, which, this is why we do Dress for Success, right? It's like, come on. Anyway, so just keep that in mind with the extras that you add.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I have a question.
Yep.
I think it was before, you mentioned, so what if I have a letter of referral, recommendation? I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a referral.
Yeah.
But can I put that somewhere on my resume about what that, he was the BA that I worked for at the school. Can I put something like that, his verbiage, in my resume, or maybe attach it to the resume? I mean, how does that work?
So that's why I really love LinkedIn reviews, and I love Valerie's suggestion there. And I think in education, they don't always think to go to LinkedIn and write a recommendation, but the best thing you could do is first ask for those things to be in LinkedIn, and also copy them just in case, I hate to allow platforms to hold all my stuff. So you also want to have a separate copy in case the platform goes away or whatever. I don't think that's happening anytime soon with LinkedIn, but again, you want to own your own content. So I would say first and foremost, if you can get it on LinkedIn, then they're definitely going to see it before they decide to call you, right? If not,
so I can attach it to LinkedIn?
You could put it up on LinkedIn. Like, there's a featured section where you can upload documents.
And
it's like a small little document. It might be a little less likely to get read. But what I do like is, what's the most important sentence or two in there? And you could take that and put that on your resume. You could also take that and make a little featured highlight and upload that into your LinkedIn. You could put it in your LinkedIn summary. So you talk about what you do, and then you say, I'm also known for, and here's what my, the educational executive I supported said about me, and then put something like that. So you do want to find ways to work it in, because when people have those referral letters, the only way they're seeing them usually is if they've already decided whether or not they're interviewing you. They're not helping you get the interview when you're holding on to it, waiting to bring it to the interview, right? So
and here's what I did, which may be helpful for you. So I had the referral letter from, what I actually asked all of my folks, folks that I wanted to, give me a referral or recommendation. I said, hey, look, would you mind uploading something on my LinkedIn profile. So that person can go right to your profile. If you
Gotcha.
scroll down to your profile where it says recommendation, that person can write a nice recommendation. Whatever you put in that referral letter, recommendation, is all interchangeable.
Put it there, put it in LinkedIn.
You can put it
Type
directly in LinkedIn himself versus you haven't attached anything to anything.
Gotcha.
It always shows up on your LinkedIn profile.
And the way you do
Okay.
that is when you're on their profile page, so they have to be on LinkedIn in order to do it.
Of
Right.
course.
On their
Right.
profile page, there's a little like drop down menu and you click on that underneath their name and it'll say request recommendation. You just click on that and then you can send them that note directly saying, hi, really love working with you, blah, blah, blah. I was wondering if you might write me a recommendation, and then be specific about what skills you might want them to highlight, so. And when it's your current employer, it depends on if they know you're looking or whatever. But if it's someone that you worked for that knows you're looking, you can say, these are the skills can you please stress my technology skills or my whatever it is that you think is most important next? Because I know when people ask for recommendations, the person they're asking always wants to know, what do you want me to say? There's so many things I could say.
Yeah.
So it's great to give them, coach them in what you want them to focus on. That can really help.
Okay, thank you.
So resume don'ts, things that might date your resume, or I love the 80s. So I just think this outfit's kind of cool, but whatever. I'm an old lady now, but if you don't want to date your resume and you want to make it look up to date, some things to consider are, checking for spelling and grammatical errors. Don't rely on spell check. Get someone else to get eyeballs on it. I see the word manger, MANGER, on resumes all the time, and people meant manager, but it's just that spell check knows that's a word, so it's never going to pick it up for you. It's not really customary in the United States to put pictures on resumes. You're going to put that on your LinkedIn. So for the most part, I would say no photos on the resume. Objective statements we talked about, we're not using them. Italics and underlining, I keep forgetting to take that out because that's fine to use for the most part, as long as you're using it sparingly. A lot of times we're not putting high school on resumes anymore. But again, if you feel like your network through high school might be looking for you from, people you went to high school with, you might want to network with, you could put that on your LinkedIn as well. You do not need to put references available upon request. We talked about heavy jargon and acronyms and first person I. You shouldn't use first person at all on a resume. So get rid of I or me or I've on your resume. I do like to use a little color sometimes, or a little quote, maybe a little graphic, right? And if you look at this beautiful woman on the left, she's got this nice statement necklace and it highlights, her overall look. And then again, dating myself, you've got Mimi from the Drew Carey Show, who's over accessorized, right? Sometimes I see resumes where it's just charts and graphs and colors and boxes, and it's just your eye doesn't know where to go. And honestly, sometimes the applicant tracking systems really don't like that. There's a lot of resumes you can create in Canva, which I don't even know, sometimes I think they're too busy, because I really do like to just go down the line and read them. And I know a lot of recruiters do, but some of them are just too much. And the applicant tracking system gets fussy about it. And it just takes away from the content. Content is king. You want the shading or the little bit of color to point to those key accomplishments that you want them to notice about you. You don't want the format to distract from the content.
It's so interesting that you say that too, because I used to have, because I'm in communications and I serve as like the spokesperson or the media person, I actually had my picture on my resume. And a person that reviewed my resume was like, absolutely take your picture off. Do not do that, because somebody could see you as a Black woman. They could be racist. They don't want to hire you, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay, fine. So I thought it looked great.
Yeah.
And it like you said, it gave some color to all of that content.
Yeah.
But I was advised not to absolutely put a picture on a resume.
Yeah, Valerie, the resume, and you could make a nice bio for yourself. So when you are speaking and you have a bio that you're giving out, you can have a nice photo on the bio when you're already asked to speak, you're already there and you hand it out. But I agree with them. And it's a shame, but the truth is what the resume is there to do is to give people reasons to say no, right? Right. We have like 250 applicants. We only can interview 10. So I'm just going through resumes saying, who can I take out of the pile? Who can I move out in the no, right? And so you never know who that random recruiter or first person to get eyes on that stack, what their biases are. And so I agree. And that's why I also just caution people about too much mom stuff, too much PTA stuff. I was a stay-at-home mom for years. I built a business around my family. My number one value is love and connection. I'm all for all of it, you know, but I don't know what the screener is going to think. And I just want to get myself in the room with the decision maker so I can sell myself. And so sometimes those things that give you them a reason to say no, like political affiliation or religious affiliation, and that person that has that bias may not even be the person you're working with on a day-to-day basis. They may be an external recruiter, right? So yes, I think the photo sometimes can be an issue. Now, that being said, we have our LinkedIn URL usually on our resume, and they have our LinkedIn profile they can go to, so they are going to know that. But I think in the UK, they do photos. In Europe, they do photos. In the US, most of my executive resumes, it is also just the tradition too, that you don't, it looks more like you're kind of in the know if you don't.
And what would you advise? Like even in LinkedIn, I see a lot of folks on LinkedIn with no picture, which drives me bananas.
Yeah.
If you are a professional, you're looking to either get hired or do some hiring. People should be comfortable enough in this day and age, because we're going to Google you anyway, to have a picture out there. But when I see pictures of folks who say they want to consult with me or do business with me, but don't have a picture on LinkedIn, I won't even call them back.
You know, I agree with you that I think it looks incomplete. And also sometimes people have the same names. You know, when I'm Googling someone up, trying to introduce them to a client or something, and I'm like, oh, is that them? You know, and then I have to look through their stuff to see if it's them because they don't have a photo. So, and some people are better at faces, remembering faces than names. And so once they see you, they're like, oh yeah, that's who I was thinking of. And so, yes, it doesn't look as complete. I also like to have a different background for people to do a different background. You can go into canva.com and make a background for yourself. But especially someone like you in communications, you're going to want your LinkedIn profile to look like a polished, you know, website of someone's, right? And where it's very visual. We're visual people, and we're used to social media giving us images. And so I usually tell people, if I scan through your LinkedIn and I can't kind of get a feel for what you do without reading any words, you should consider adding more visuals. So whether it's the background on the LinkedIn, making sure your photo's there. And I liked people even to upload, like if you're, let's say in communications, you were holding big town hall events or speaking, you know, let's put a picture of you speaking. Let's put a picture of you. I'm trying to see if I can find before I, I don't want to get too far off my track here, but, you know, you can even do little collages in Canva where you can put like demonstrating you in different settings, you know, maybe giving a speech or running a town hall event, or and even websites, putting links to websites of your organizations you've consulted with, then can give people a flavor for what it's like, because they'll see the videos or the pictures from the website. So yes, I think the visuals can be really important. I want to show you a sample or two, just to give you an idea. I'm going to send you a sample cover letter too. But so this is an example of, can you guys all see Mary Ann Henderson here? All right, so this is just an example of what we've talked about when you put it all together. So we've got a name, we've got contact information. You know, in this resume, I happen to just put 3 of the transferable skills at the top. You don't have to do that. We put a title, sales executive. We've got a branding statement. Then we've got, here's those 3 main things about me that I want you to know that I think are going to matter most. I have strategic vision. I'm a transformative leader, and I drive profitable growth. And so here's what I do with the finances. Here's how I help the organization evolve. And here's how I get people aligned around a common goal or vision, right? So that's those 3 most important things we talked about. And then here's my strengths and competencies in a nutshell that you can see. And then if we look at the experience, you know, Procter & Gamble, president of sales, delivered, you know, this amount of money by doing these things and saving this, you know, across the business, blah, blah, blah. You know, so we see some numbers, we see some nice, we see some nice numbers and percentages and quantification in here. Just trying to see what else. And then we've got education. So again, I wrote out Master of Business Administration, then MBA, and then the professional development pieces here. So this is just one example. This one's even a little wordy. Sample's getting a little older, but you know, but does anyone have any questions on, now that you kind of see it all put together in terms of the summary or the write-up, questions on that? Or
Obviously, and if I was looking at this resume to interview somebody, I would think this would be too text
Heavy.
And I would want because the resumes that I've reviewed and seen in the past, I would want it to be more succinct with maybe bullet points versus all this look a lot of words.
It is a lot of words. Yeah, I think that with this person, I think that these are almost like little mini branding statements for each area and each transferable skill that they bring. Yeah, so I think that the trend is moving. If you want to do less words than this, I think that's fine. I think that the key is to target your title, have one sentence that's kind of sums you up, and then think about what are the 3 most important points. And if you just wanted them to be one-liners, where it's, it doesn't go into 2 lines, but you just have 1 line of, I think that would be absolutely fine to do that. And, if you wanted to take out some of the words, you could just make it 2 lines of strengths and competencies. I think that would be fine if you wanted to thread it out a little bit. Any other questions?
I think it looks nice and organized.
Well, the idea really,
I mean, like what mine is definitely, I mean, mine is okay, but this one looks really organized.
well, and that's important because you want to think about where your eye goes, right? So it's easy to see the title. Who is this person? Sales executive. I'm not like, oh, it just says summary, but they were doing this and then they're doing that. And who are they? And what exactly are, right from the beginning, we know who they are. When we talked about boxes and shading and kind of content being king and then format following, right? This box is really helping to make the branding statement stand out. So we're using bold for that. So it's really easy to just read that statement up top, right? And then we're highlighting everything in this box as, hey, this is like my 1, 2, 3 punch. Like these are the 3, if you don't read anything else, like these are the things you need to know about me. And these are the reasons why I think you would want to interview me, right? And so we're really kind of boxing that in and making it all stand out. And then if you want to see, okay, they had some P&L management responsibility. Oh, they have done some e-commerce, right? So now they did private label. Okay, we're about to launch a private label brand. So I didn't have to go to your 4th job down to know you had some private label experience. So, in this case, we're getting to see at a glance now in the strengths and competencies, everything that person has to offer. If you were going to add a quote, you could add it right underneath the strengths and competencies, or maybe right underneath the box. Maybe you make it like some of this is navy, it's hard to see here, and some of this is black. You could make it navy to make the quote stand out, whatever. Yeah, and I definitely, that other summary I showed you was basically 3 bullets that were each 1 line. So you kind of take, this is a little more of an executive brief type of summary, right? So you could just make it 1-liners, Valerie, if you felt like I just need less words on the page. It's too many words for what I want to do. Let me see if I can. I don't know if you guys need to run. I see we're almost at 8. I'm just going to grab a cover letter real quick. I'll show you the cover letter. Let's see. I think that's a sample cover letter. All right, so this is the cover letter format that I really like. I kind of like the rule of 3s. So again, it's 3 of the most important things you want to say relative to the job ad. So here's my case, of how I meet the requirements in the job ad. And we're sort of grouping it into 3 areas. So when I read a job ad and I'm writing a cover letter for it, I say, okay, how can I sort of group these into themes and make it really skimmable? So even if the person just reads, oh, East Coast account manager, what will they bring to the, to the organization? Boom, boom, boom. They just read the underlined, bolded, bulleted 3 statements. I'm getting my full message across to them, which is great. The big thing with cover letters is just getting them read, making them so they're not boring and they get read. So people are going to kind of skim them. And then if it's like a ho-hum cover letter that it looks like you're sending to everybody and it's not even specific to that job or that organization, they're going to give it a quick skim and it's going to be over. But if you really want them to read your case you're making, give them the skimmable, highlighted, underlined information, and then you can give some more evidence to back up those statements. And so let's say I'm really interested in, someone who can understand my customer. Well, that's the 3rd bullet. So I'm going to read more about, oh, so she worked in a retail shop. So what did she do there? Right. So now my eye goes to what's most interesting to me, and then I can read the detail.
And you know what's so funny? I was looking at another webinar maybe a week or so ago, and believe it or not, the person who was leading the webinar said cover letters are not even valid anymore because everybody's applying online and through the application system, everything is digital. And it's very rare that a link will say, "Oh, upload your cover letter." But nowadays, depending again on the industry and the organization, they just want to see the resume and not even asking for a cover letter. What I thought was so weird because for a potential candidate to take the time to write a very nice and detail-oriented cover letter, and then they don't even ask for it. So it's kind of like, it's like a catch-22. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
It is. You're more damned if you don't, I think. So what I've observed, because I'm always asking recruiters, what are you looking for? How are you recruiting? What are you doing? And I will say that the stats are that about 60 to 70% of the time, the cover letters are read.
Okay.
And if they don't ask for, if you can't upload 2 files, I recommend you take your cover letter and make it the 3rd page of your resume. And so that they will see it in the file.
That's a good idea.
But a lot of
That's what I
times
do.
you can upload 2 files and you can, upload the cover letter. A lot of times I still do see people ask for it, but I think what happens is if the resume is borderline, then they very often use the cover letter to make the decision whether or not it goes in the yes or the no pile. And so if there's a little bit of an elephant in the room on your resume, there's a gap, there's a red flag, there's something that they're wondering, well, she looks like I might want to interview her, but what about this? And that's where your cover letter can address whatever that is. Or you can just if it's a really competitive job that you're applying for, you could just make a strong case for yourself beyond the resume. So, and that's why I like it to be skimmable, because if you can get them to read it, really read it, that's the hardest part. And so, because they're going to read the first couple sentences, and if you don't have them at hello, forget it. So if you actually look at this content, how do we get a disruptive opening that people will read? This says, I've been following Skip Hop since the creation of your revolutionary convertible diaper bag, forever changing the baby gear industry. As your new blah blah manager, I'll bring the same level of tenacity to transform the lives of parents and children you serve. So this particular letter we wrote was written to a person who founded a company that was based off of one product that he had created, and then it launched his whole company. And so we're demonstrating we get what your company is. We know that you're innovators in this industry, and so are we, and we want to be a part of that. We want to do that together. I want to do that with you and help you to do that, right? And so I know for a fact this cover letter got a call because of that understanding their story and demonstrating that understanding of their story and the alignment of how I fit into what your organization does. And so you want to think about what's an opening, what's the connection between me and this organization? What are they struggling with? What's the pain point? How can I help them? And make some connection. Maybe it's just the mission. Maybe you feel aligned to the mission, right? And then what are the 3 most important points you want to make, and how can you back that up with where you've done this for people in the past and gotten results, and how can you, elaborate maybe on the resume a little more. But I definitely wouldn't say cover letters are dead. And I hear that misnomer a lot. And, are there people that don't read them? Yeah, but I actually hear a lot of recruiters that say that they do. And when you do make it to the hiring team, they read it, they'll read the cover letter if there's one attached. So, if your resume is such that it doesn't even get you past the first pass, right? Yeah, they're probably not going to look at your cover letter if the resume doesn't look like you have the basic competencies for the job. It's when you get in that gray area where it's like, on the fence about this person, that's where the cover letter can make a big difference.
Got it. Okay. Excellent.
Any questions, comments, things we didn't cover that I know it's almost 8, so we probably should wrap up. And anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
This is really good. Very,
Yeah,
very
this is good. Thank you.
very good.
So glad. I'm happy to look. I'll send you. So let me see in the chat before I make sure that I have everybody's addresses. And I'm sure, actually, I know Lorraine is going to have your stuff because she sent out the, she sent out the invitation. So I'll send her all my stuff. And then
You'll be able to share the sample cover letters and resumes as well?
yes, I'm going to send those out. And I'll usually what I do is send it all to them at Dress for Success, and then they distribute it. So I'll send the checklist. I also have a LinkedIn checklist, which I'm happy to send you guys too.
Yeah, whatever you got, that's helpful. That'll be great.
And they're like pretty comprehensive. So yeah, just even if you do like 5 things on it, don't get overwhelmed, but
Now, are we gonna sit and do this resume when we go to the trainings, or?
so I'm just here tonight, sort of like as
Okay.
a one-off situation. So I'm sure that part of the program usually is that there's people that critique the resumes
Okay,
and
perfect.
yeah, so I'm sure there'll be people looking at it. And I don't know if they're doing mentors and everything still, but usually there's a one-on-one.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Will
yeah.
you be there Saturday as well?
I wish, but no, I'm not going to be there Saturday.
Okay, I was just wondering, I would love to meet you.
Yeah, this has been
Same
such
here.
a pleasure. And just so you know, like, I love Dress for Success. I've enjoyed speaking with you guys tonight. Just know that use me as an advocate. If there's anyone in my network that I can introduce you to, I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of places around here. I've worked with a lot of pharma clients and educators, so I'm happy to make introductions.
Are you in New Jersey?
I'm in Sparta, yeah. So I used to be in Morristown, and now I'm a little further north, up in Sparta.
Oh, and you're definitely on LinkedIn, so I'm gonna find you.
I'm on LinkedIn, yeah. So follow us, and if you have questions along the way, just know that I'm another resource that you can utilize and reach out to if you get stuck. And your Dress for Success has such great programming. I know you're going to be well cared for, but just know you have another resource now. So
What's your full name on LinkedIn?
it's Wyckoff, WYCKOFF as in Frank, and first name Julie.
Okay, Julie, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find Valerie as well. Thank you.
Awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much, Julie.
I thank you guys, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.